Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyler Barker. I serve as the coordinator within the Office of Parent and Family Programs. I'd like to welcome you to our What's Buzzin' at Georgia Tech webinar series, which is for parents and families of all Georgia Tech students to learn more about the Institute, to learn more about the campus resources, offices, and programs that we have here on campus to support your student. Today, we are joined by the Center for Student Engagement, and they will kind of talk about how to get involved on campus, whether you're remote, whether your student is here on campus, and just some really cool things that they offer through their office to kind of help gear student success for your student outside of the classroom. And so we're going to get started in a few seconds, momentarily. If you have any questions for our team today for Center for Student Engagement about anything that they're presenting on, please feel free to utilize the Q&A chat box in which you can ask questions, and then after the presentation is over, we'll get those questions answered for you. And once again, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A chat box while the presentation is ongoing. All right, and without further ado, I will turn it over to the Center for Student Engagement team.
Hi, everyone. I want to, on behalf of the whole Center for Student Engagement, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're really, really excited to be with you today for this webinar series, and we hope that you learn a lot today, that you ask us lots of questions, and that we can give you a better idea of exactly why it's important for your students to get involved or get engaged outside of the classroom, and just how they can get to doing that. To start off with introductions, I'll have each of our 4 presenters today introduce themselves. I'm in your top left corner here. My name is Quinn Foster. I use the pronouns they and them, and I am the Director of Student Organizations.
Hi, y'all. My name is Victoria Redmon. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am the coordinator for Student Organizations.
Good afternoon, families. My name is Jamison Keller, and I serve Georgia Tech as the Assistant Dean of Students and Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Strohmenger. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Civic Engagement here within the Center for Student Engagement.
All right, so I'll just walk us through the roadmap real quick. So we're going to start off the presentation by talking about the big why, as promised. What is the best kept secret, and why should people get involved at Tech? We'll talk a little bit about the difference between involvement and engagement. We'll give you a high-level overview of what the Center for Student Engagement is. A lot of the time, folks are, a little confused about what that exactly means. What is your name? And then we'll talk about virtual engagement tools. So how can your student in the current scenario find ways to get engaged? And then we'll close out with upcoming opportunities specific for your students. And of course, like Tyler mentioned, we will have Q&A. Cool, I'll do learning outcomes too. So we have a few learning outcomes for today for each of you. So we want to make sure that we are providing you with information, and also that we're fulfilling our own goals as to what it is you're going to learn. We do this with students as well. So the first is, we want you to be able to articulate one benefit of your student participating in extracurricular involvements. You should be able to discuss one difference between involvement and engagement. And of course, identify at least one resource for virtual engagement for your student. This is a duplicate slide, Tyler, if you don't mind advancing past it.
Yep, good to go.
Victoria, this one's you.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was the next one. Okay. So yeah, we can go ahead and talk about the big why. So why is it important for students to get involved on campus? First off, community and belonging, finding a place where they fit in, where they feel like they have established some sense of community with the folks that are around them. Also, academic success. Research shows that students involved have higher rates of academic success in the classroom. And then also for personal and professional development. Through getting involved, your students will be able to make connections both with their peers and with professionals in their respective field and on campus. Awesome. Great. So now we're going to talk for a second about the difference between involvement and engagement. So not one is better than the other, but we want your students to be both involved and engaged while they're at Georgia Tech. In time, over their 4 years, they'll be able to find a balance that works for them between involvement and engagement. So first, when we talk about involvement, we're referring to generally being active in their community. And that looks a little bit different right now. We have some students on campus and some students at home working virtually. But just a few examples of how your student can start to get involved. Your student can meet up with friends to share a meal outside or in the dining hall, joining on a virtual game night or a game night on their floor in their residence hall, picking up a game of Frisbee on Tech Green, or maybe attending a sporting event. Those are all examples of how your student can start to get involved on campus. Involvement is typically low stakes participation. Your student can try to get involved in many different things on campus. One of the best things about college is that students can try so many different things that they might not have the ability or the access to before they came to college. So when you're talking with your student, encourage them to get involved and get out there and try many different things. So now on the other side, I'm going to talk about what engagement is. So when students are engaged, there's an investment in that engagement. To be engaged means to invest in something and to expect a positive return for that investment. For example, a student might use their time and energy and resources in a leadership position in their student organization. So maybe they're the president, the treasurer, or a different executive officer. Their goal in that investment is to leave an impact, to better their organization. And in return, they're getting excellent leadership experience, personal and professional connections, and practice working with others. They can build their resume from these experiences. Because engagement means an investment, we recommend that students only engage in 2 or 3 different activities in their first year at Georgia Tech. Balancing engagement and academics can be challenging for some students, so that's why we recommend not to get too involved right off the jump. Students will know that they found their home and their engagement when they feel like they belong and they are satisfied with the people that they're around. Great, can move on.
All right, now we'll move into talking about the 4 different areas of the Center for Student Engagement. To be very honest with you, these are non-alphabetical, but I mentioned earlier that I'm the Director of Student Organizations, and I think we're really cool, so I put us first. So Tyler, if you don't mind advancing for us. Awesome. So at Georgia Tech, we have about 550 registered student organizations. That is a huge number for our population. We're really, really excited about it. And I think the high number of organizations that we have at Tech really exemplifies 2 things. One, the diversity of the ways that our students like to get involved and engaged on campus. Really, there is an opportunity for everybody at Georgia Tech. And the second one is really that Georgia Tech entrepreneurial spirit. Every student thinks, you know, I've had this question or I've had this experience and I would like to answer that question for a peer of mine or, you know, to make an experience better for somebody who comes after me. And so my student organization is a way to do that. So our student organizations are super active. Later on in the presentation, we'll give you some more information about how your student can find student organizations, learn more about them, decide if it's a good fit, and things like that. On the next slide, I will give you some examples of that kind of diversity I was telling you about. There at Georgia Tech, we have some organizations you will have heard of or that you would expect, like Bowling Club, the African American Student Union or Model UN. but also that sort of unique Georgia Tech flavor that we love so much. We have things like underwater hockey, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's quite literally hockey with a puck and with hockey sticks that you play underwater. And some homegrown organizations like Hack GT, which is one of the largest and most celebrated hackathon organizations in colleges across the US. They won what they call Major League Hacking, if you can remember, like the MLB. They won that competition a few years back. We're really proud of them.
Awesome. So again, my name's Sarah. I'm the Director of Civic Engagement, and we really focus in on community service and community engagement within this office. There are over 65, maybe even over 70 different service-based student organizations on campus, and we do a lot of work to support them in their efforts. We really focus in on making sure that many of our service initiatives are student organized, student centered, and student facilitated, and that we are affecting many different layers of community. So that might be on campus or within a small pocket of space on campus, but it can also be at the city level, state level, all the way to global impact. We try to just make sure that we're living out that progress and service motto we have here at Georgia Tech, and just affecting positive change within the community. We have 4 organizations that are closely connected, or directly advised, I should say, through Civic Engagement, which are, it's called MOVE, Alternative Service Breaks, our Jumpstart program, which is a year-long service experience, and then recently added in the First Year Servant Leadership Organization, and then we sort of indirectly advise and support the others that are on campus as well.
You're muted, Jameson.
So sorry about that, everyone. Again, as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life, I'm happy to give you a broad overview of our community and a little bit of our history here. The fraternity community actually dates back to the start of Georgia Tech itself, and so we are now about 130 years old, and the first fraternity started a year after Georgia Tech opened. Once Georgia Tech admitted women, the first 5 women students here began a sorority, and so that gave birth to our sorority community, which we now have 10 chapters within the Panhellenic community and a number of other chapters in the Panhellenic, National Panhellenic Council, as well as the Multicultural Greek Council. Then we had our first African American students enrolled and admitted, and then that shortly after gave birth to the National Panhellenic community as well. So we have 8 of what's called the Divine 9 national organizations, representing historically African American chapters. So currently we stand at about 26% of the undergraduate student population. About 3,800 students are involved currently in fraternity and sorority life. They primarily focus on 4 major areas. First and foremost, leadership development. Every organization has their own educational programs, own history, and things that they need to learn from their national organization to learn about how they were founded at the national level, and then also the history here of their own chapter. They also pride themselves on service and philanthropy. So they commit many, many hours to doing service projects both on and off campus throughout the metropolitan Atlanta area. They also raise money, so every national organization has an adopted philanthropy that they ask their chapters to produce events and raise money and funds for a variety of different causes. And then finally, and probably the most important, is that home feeling. And so brotherhood and sisterhood is a primary component as social organizations, and they assist our students in taking this very large campus and breaking it down into a smaller community that really is full of support and guidance, not just a place to live, but really a place to find support, a place to get away from the stresses and get a greater understanding from their peers about how to manage Georgia Tech life. And then finally, academics. And so our academic program within our chapters are both on an individual level and a national level. So every chapter has their own programs to support their students and their members in succeeding academically. And the national offices also have rewards and scholarships. And then finally, I'm happy to say that for probably about the past decade now, our fraternity and sorority community grade point averages are much higher than the individual student averages. So we have a total of 53 chapters. On the slides, you saw how that breaks down. We actually have 4 governing councils, which are representative of different chapters with a specific focus. And so there you'll see Multicultural Greek Council. We have 5 organizations within that, both fraternities and sororities. The National Panhellenic Council, like I said before, we have 8 historically African American chapters out of the Divine 9. Previously, the 2 other councils, the Interfraternity Council, we have 30 fraternities here on this campus. And then finally, the Collegiate Panhellenic Council, we have 8 of the National Panhellenic Council or Conference sororities, as well as 2 associate chapters, one specifically based on Christian faith and the other on STEM majors. So that's a broad overview, and I'll be happy later on with the rest of my colleagues to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about student media. So this area of the Center for Student Engagement encompasses the 8 different student organizations. Tyler, if you don't mind advancing for me, I'd love to show folks the next slide. The 8 different organizations that manage a publication or a radio station. And so these are the 8 that are listed here. And I want to sort of plug here, if you have a student who was interested in the more liberal arts things in high school, maybe you had a creative student who was interested in the art, like, you know, fine arts and drawing or printmaking or painting or whatever it was, if they like to write, or even if they're just pursuing research as an undergraduate student, I would really encourage you to encourage them to look into getting involved with one of our 8 publications. So we have a newspaper, a yearbook, a free speech magazine, a cultural magazine, a literary magazine, a radio, the T-book, which is our traditions book, and then also an undergraduate research journal. I want to highlight 2 that are on your screen right now. The first one being Rec Radio. This is a really good example of, again, that Georgia Tech student passion and innovation. Our college radio station, WREK, or commonly known as REC 91.1, has the farthest reaching radio signal of any college station in the nation. So that's what happens when you get some folks who are really interested in radio and some engineers together and they do rad stuff. And then we also want to highlight the Tower. That's the undergraduate research journal. They're a really unique organization. They actually publish undergraduate research. So it's really difficult for undergraduate students to find avenues to publish their research. Of course, tech students are really interested in research in undergrad, so that's what the Tower is here for. And as a fun fact, the Tower is the only undergraduate research journal that is also housed in the Library of Congress. So if for that alone, that's pretty cool if your student gets published in the Tower.
Awesome. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the virtual engagement tools that we have to offer for your students to connect with other student organizations on campus and kind of find out what's happening right now on campus and virtually. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is Engage. Engage is the home to all of our 500 plus registered student organizations. Every student at Georgia Tech has access to log into Engage and to explore events, organizations, and just kind of get a feel of what's going on campus. So if your student has a specific passion, say they're interested in arts or creative arts, they can go on Engage and search in different categories for different organizations that they might be interested in joining. Engage is a really great tool to use because students can directly contact officers of that organization and express that they're interested in getting involved. Our organizations right now are doing a great job of online virtual programming for those students who might not be able to join us on campus this semester. And they have those events hosted in Engage right now. Actually, coincidentally, this is what we call Engagement Week. So if your student is looking to get involved on campus, have them go to Engage. We have over 60 events, online events populated in Engage right now of different organizations hosting open house events, game nights, Q&A sessions, anything that you can think of. All your student has to do is to go online on Engage and RSVP to those events, and they will get an online link to join a Blue Jeans meeting, a Teams meeting, anything like that. It's a really easy way for them to kind of get plugged in on campus if they're unsure exactly where they want to be right now. Kind of going off of that, we also have an app that connects to Engage. Sometimes it gets confusing. It's called Quark. So what Quark does is it populates events that are hosted on Engage into an app on your phone. It's available for iPhones and Androids. And what happens, all students have access to Quark. They download the app on their phone and connect it to the Georgia Tech server. And when they open the app, they can see a running list of all events that we have going on campus. So if the event is in Engage, the event is also in Quark. So they can scroll and RSVP, see details for events. It's a very accessible way for students who might not be on the computer all the time to find out exactly what's happening on campus. Awesome. You can advance to the next slide, please. Great. So we do have Engage in Quark, but we also have other tools online to help students get involved. So of course, you all know you can visit our website. I've linked to the Center for Student Engagement on this slide that you all can view later on. But that website also has links to the 4 different areas in our department. So you can go visit the Student Org's website, Civic Engagement, Fraternity and Sorority Life, and the Student Publications. Each website is unique and has different information that you can find out about our organizations that we sponsor. Another really awesome tool, your students, if your student is on campus, they have got this when they moved into the residence hall, but we also have an online version of it. The 2020 involvement guide goes through all of our different functional areas in our department, and you can learn just a little bit more about each one. It's actually like a virtual pamphlet. It's really, really cool and interactive, and I highly suggest that y'all check it out and your students check it out as well. It's available on our websites. On the homepage, you'll be able to access it. And then finally, I touched on this a little bit, right? But it's currently Engagement Week and the Organizations Fair. So we hosted an Organizations Fair completely virtually during Week of Welcome for students to go in and kind of get engaged with different organizations on campus. And that website is still live. It's called Flipgrid. Basically, the platform, students can log in with their Georgia Tech username and they can explore our 12 different categories for organizations. So student leaders have actually created video content that students can go in and watch to get a feel of what the organizations are all about. And directly from that website, students are able to contact organizations and reach out with questions. And to accompany that, like I said before, it is Engagement Week. So students are hosting tons of events on Engage right now that your student can log into and RSVP. Anybody is welcome. There's no restrictions to who can RSVP to these events. So I highly recommend that your students go and check that out.
Wonderful. So I just dropped in the Q&A just to highlight this, the link to the involvement guide. And like Victoria mentioned earlier, this PowerPoint will be available after the fact, including all of the links that we've hyperlinked in here. So if there's anything you're interested in, you should be able to find it here. If there's something you want a direct link to in the Q&A, feel free to ask me and I'm happy to drop that in there for you as well. So as promised, our last section is actually about upcoming opportunities for your students. So Victoria's already covered Engagement Week. I'm going to pass it off to Jameson to talk about Greek recruitment.
Yeah, so our primary recruitment periods have just concluded, but there are still opportunities to get involved in a chapter. And so many chapters are still recruiting throughout the semester. This is known as ongoing bid acceptance. And our Multicultural Greek Council as well as the NPHC Council have just started their process this week. And so they can reach out, look at the dates and contacts on our Engage platform, or they can reach us on our website. We also have some involvement guides and recruitment guides listed there under Fraternity and Sorority Life. And many students choose to wait. And so we also have a primary recruitment period in the spring semester. And so many students began to just do some research and get to know the chapters. It's a big commitment. It's a lifetime commitment. So they're beginning to do their research now and plan on doing recruitment in the spring. And so that's certainly fine. Your student would not be missing out on a good process, even though they missed this fall.
Would you go back a slide for us, Tyler?
Oh, yes, sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you.
You're good. I can jump in and talk about some of our service opportunities that are coming up. I think traditionally we anticipate that community service means going somewhere and serving together as a group in person, but many of our service orgs have transitioned to thinking about service in either in a small group way or doing service through remote or virtual experience as well. So one of the organizations, Move, currently has 6 service or social issue themed committees that they are recruiting for. So if you have a student who's really passionate about community service and has been interested in focusing on things like advocacy and awareness raising, philanthropy, or even doing small scale service experiences, we welcome them to apply for one of our Move committee positions. And that's a rolling application that will be open throughout the semester. Our alternative service break group does traditionally do travel during major breaks during the academic year. For fall, we will not be traveling, but they are working on some virtual programming that encompasses some of the elements of our trip experiences, hearing from speakers who are passionate about particular social issues and being able to connect to some service experiences. Most importantly, probably, is the ability to connect with a small group of peers who are also interested and passionate about service. And so information about those programs, virtual programs, will be out in the next couple of weeks. So I would definitely recommend people get connected to that space. And if they want to travel with us in the future, once we're able to do so, we would love for them to just get connected with us. The other I'll highlight really quickly is Jumpstart. We have a chapter of Jumpstart within Georgia Tech, but this is a larger national program, and they focus on literacy efforts within pre-K classrooms. And so we recruit students who are interested in committing the full year to this type of educational and literacy-based programming. People can sign on as volunteers, but they can also join us and get paid through federal work study if they apply and are selected and are able to commit to that year experience as well. So this is a really unique way to get connected to service, but also utilize those federal work study dollars if your student has those, or if they're just interested in literacy work within the Atlanta community.
Awesome. And the last item on the slide is the Gold Route and the Leader Summit. So this program actually came out of 2 different questions that we got persistently in the Center for Student Engagement. On the one hand, we heard from new students and from sophomore students also who were trying to figure out, my first year is over now, what do I do? They would say, I know that it's important that I should do stuff outside of class. I don't know how to figure out what my path should be. What organization should I join? What should I invest my time in? How do I know if I'm a good leader? How can I train myself on these different areas that I'd like to learn more about? On the other hand, we often got the question from students who were graduating, students who had been really heavily engaged in our office, and they said, I know so many things, and I wish there was a way that I could have told first year or second year me all of the things that I know now about how to make the most out of their experience at Tech, what to get engaged in, where to invest their time, how to do things, how to make connections and network with people, etc. And so out of both of these questions, we've launched something called the Gold Route. GOLD is an acronym here for Guiding Organization Leader Development, and it's for every Georgia Tech student who's interested in how they can create a cohesive, central narrative for everything they did outside of the classroom. This is really important for them to be able to articulate the different kinds of skills that they've gained in their student organizations. Victoria mentioned those earlier, to leverage the networking and the connections that are available to them. And so the Gold Route is really designed to say, whether you're brand new or you're trying out for a leadership position or you're getting ready to graduate, wherever you are on that spectrum, we're here to help you and provide that cohesive place that you can have that narrative from. So if you're interested in the Gold Route, I'll drop that link in the Q&A as well. But we encourage any student who's interested in involvement outside of the classroom to check it out and to consider joining. After the Gold Route, you see the Leader Summit. This is formally called the President Summit, but again, it's for any leader who's interested in sort of jump-starting that experience at Tech, whether it's learning who the current officers of different organizations are, or what resources are available to them, what their leadership style is, all that kind of stuff. We cover it in the Leader Summit, which is a day-long conference. It will be virtual this year, which is important to know. All right, so in closing, these are some final links for y'all to get in touch with us. Certainly you've had a lot of information from the four of us, but we are happy to spend the next 29 minutes with you for any of the questions that you have. So thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to hearing what y'all want to learn more about.
Thank you so much to Jamison, Sarah, Victoria, and Quinn for sharing just some helpful information for us about how to get involved at Tech in just a different way. And so now what we'll do is turn it over to the chat box. We'll have Q&A. So the first question, what type of activities are available for students to get involved and meet people safely during this time of COVID? Who would like to take the first one?
I can go ahead and speak to that. So I talked a little bit previously about Engage and Cork and how we're currently hosting Engagement Week. So if your student is virtual right now or on campus, but still unsure of exactly where they want to be or what they want to get involved in, I highly recommend your student RSVP to a few events that we have hosted on Engage. It doesn't even have to be something that they're interested in. Oh, thank you, Quinn, for sharing. So this is what Engage looks like. You can see the events tab up at the top. And when Quinn clicks on this, you can see you can search for different events by time, if it's online, by category. So when Quinn scrolls down on the categories, we have the Fall Organizations Fair, which is Engagement Week. And if you click on that, your student will be able to see literally everything that we have going on this week. We have, I think, around 65 events populated right now, and those are growing as the weeks continue. So if an organization isn't hosting an open house this week, that doesn't mean that they're not going to host an open house later on in the semester. Different organizations have different levels of involvement, and it's really up to your student to kind of get out there and put themselves out there and make something that they're interested in. For example, the Trailblazers, you can see on here, they have a meeting tonight at 7 p.m. You can see the online meeting location instructions. So some organizations host events on Blue Jeans. Sometimes they do Zoom. If an organization is having a movie watch party, they'll put the link right there. That's definitely something our organizations are taking advantage of this semester. And then you can see a brief description of the organization. So if your student decides to attend this event, they can see the host organization. And if they end up really loving it, they can go to that organization and request to join right then and there. And the president and administrators of that page will get the notification, and your student can join pretty easily. So like I said, encourage your students to really just go out there and try something new this week or this semester, and put themselves out there in something that they want to get involved in.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing that. The next question that I have is for Jamison. Jamison, if I'm a parent and I have a student who is remote this semester, can you just clarify, are they able to join a Greek organization virtually, yes or no, and what that process looks like?
Yes, and so, like I said earlier, unfortunately, the primary recruitment process has concluded. That process did include a virtual process, and so students met all of the chapters, got to know the members of the organizations, and then selection all was done virtually. That will still continue throughout the semester, and so if your student wants to contact me or our office, I could let them know which organizations are still recruiting this semester. All of their meetings are done virtually right now. Many of their activities are also done virtually. At this time, they are not permitted to have large events or parties or anything like that. In fact, we're asking them to limit any sort of grouping to 10 people or less. So everything has been transitioned over to a virtual format.
Thank you so much for that, Jameson. The next question I have, it seems like it may be for Quinn. Considering the amount of online time my student is spending, just studying and taking classes, etc., what does in-person only engagement opportunities look like this semester?
That's a really good question, Tyler. And I would say that it's the situation is evolving, right? As most of us would know, that every day it's something new. I'm sure all of the directors on this call can attest to that. We're all facing new challenges and new questions every day in terms of, you know, I am an organization that's really dedicated to doing things outside. We don't know how, as an organization, to fulfill our mission of doing things outside if we're virtual, which is a real question and a real concern. And so recently, just as an example, Trailblazers, who you looked at a minute ago, they're trying to host an in-person event where students will just walk around campus and look at trees and sort of get to know what campus looks like that way. So there are sort of one-off events that you might find like that. Generally speaking, I think it's important for you to know that for a sense of utmost safety and inclusivity for our student organizations and for all of our students, the Center for Student Engagement has asked that our registered student organizations host their events, whether that's an official program, an activity, or if it's just a general body meeting or an executive board meeting. We've asked that they host those virtually whenever possible. So I said that was one, for safety, which I think is apparent, but second, for inclusivity. So something that we're really concerned about as a team is making sure that our students who are studying from home, either domestically or internationally, or students who have a pre-existing condition that prohibits them from being able to live on campus or to socialize in person at this time, that they aren't seeing a sort of first and second class citizen in terms of what their participation looks like. So I hope that answers your question. You will find some one-off opportunities. Generally speaking, all student organizations are being encouraged to host things virtually at this point. As a second sort of follow-up, the Institute is currently exploring ways that we could have safe in-person experiences. That's an ever-evolving conversation. So as soon as we know more, we will certainly publish that and share it with Tyler and with Lacey so that our parents are aware as well of what exactly we're able to offer.
Another question that many parents may have for their students, will there be a homecoming this year? And if so, what will that look like for students? Would anybody like to take that one?
You're getting really puzzled looks from our team because our team doesn't actually handle homecoming, but I can speak a little bit to it. So homecoming is managed entirely by a group called the Student Center Programs Council. They're a student organization housed in the Student Center, and they run the homecoming events. So traditional things like there's a homecoming fair. There's usually like a concert. SCPC, as they're known, Student Center Programs Council, is currently trying to figure that out. I would venture to say that you would know more by visiting SCPC's website, which I will drop the link to. I would also venture to say I would imagine that most of that will be virtual as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Parents and families, please continue to drop questions in the chat box. We have a great team here today to kind of answer any questions that you may have about fraternity and sorority life, student involvement, and just ways to kind of get outside of the dorm room, outside of the apartment, and just kind of be active.
Sarah, I have a question for you. What if I was encouraging if my student was interested in service and I encouraged them to join one or to apply to join one of the MOVE committees? Could you tell us a little bit more about, I know it's the early stages, this is the first time we've done this,
Sure.
but what does MOVE think that committee engagement will look like?
Yeah, so we are, yeah, that's a great question. So we have 6 service themed committees, and what we're working with the committee chairs on right now is just developing some understanding of like, what does service mean if it's not us traveling as a group somewhere to do something together? And we know that that's like a really small way to do service within a community, but it's sort of the easy option. It's the it feels like community within community service, right? So we're trying to just explore what options might be. So some of that will be maybe doing more like education-based programming. So committees, for example, we have an animal welfare committee. And so they might, as a group, decide we want to host some sort of meet and greet for people who love animals and would love to get connected to the like a local Atlanta animal shelter and learn more about how to get connected once we're able to be together in person. Or we might hear from someone who works within issues of homelessness and transitional shelter and just learn more about issues and how they're affecting Atlanta. We'll also take a look at more maybe philanthropy. I think we want to just be mindful that like money is always a commodity for our students, but it is certainly a commodity right now. And so I don't know that we'll focus predominantly on fundraising as a service effort, but that's possible. The other thing that we're doing, and Move as a larger organization, not within the committees, hosted their Day of Service event just a couple of weeks ago during Welcome Week, and that was successful in format where we were able to put together some small service kits that people could come and pick up in certain time blocks, and they were able to be socially distanced. And so, for example, one of our kits had materials to make dog and cat toys that we've collected back and will one of us will take to the shelter. So that was a way for us to do direct service and in-person service in a certain way, but also stay safe and distanced as we need to right now. So we're really thinking outside of the box and trying to be mindful that service doesn't look like just one thing.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I think, you know, this year being different for the sphere of service that you would usually expect of direct hand-to-hand service, it's obviously going to look a little bit different, but I think it's really exciting to hear that Move and alternative service breaks are adapting and really focusing on this other part of service that's so important, which is the education, right? Who are we serving and why do we serve them and how do we serve them or serve alongside them? So that's really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. I have a question for Victoria. If my student who was involved in an organization in high school and perhaps Georgia Tech doesn't have that organization, but they would like to start their organization here, what would that process look like for them? Just kind of creating an organization from the ground up?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, if your student does not see an organization that they're interested in or they want to start their own, we do have an organization chartering process. We currently haven't opened the chartering windows for this semester. That is more information to come later in the fall. But you can visit the student organization's website and there is information on the requirements that your student will need to comply with in order to charter their organization. There's a few different steps that they have to go through. They have to have a certain number of members, an advisor, go through a constitution process. So there are a few different steps that your student will need to go through, but if that is something that interests them, I highly recommend it. It's a really great way for students to create their own community where they don't think there might be one.
Thank you so much for sharing that. The next question that I have is for Jameson. What training or communication is being done to chapter presidents about the seriousness of COVID and to also put a stop to parties if they happen, and also in follow-up to that, what does your office do in terms of sanctions or any type of discipline if a chapter, Greek chapter does have a party not following the social distancing guidelines?
Well, there's a lot in that question, Tyler. What I will say is we immediately started to work with our governing councils and our chapter leaders way back in March when we first started this the situation that we're in. And so that was or that included working with all of our housing corporation boards. For our parents and families, they may not know that all of our fraternity and sorority houses that they see on campus are actually privately owned and operated. So we do not manage them. We assist in things in terms of day-to-day things and helping the students manage their properties, but all of that responsibility is with their alumni. And so we worked with them in developing crisis plans and plans on how to keep their facilities safe. That includes obviously high intensity cleaning. It includes changing the way that their meals are being prepared and served. So right now they're not doing any sort of buffet. It's a grab and go situation only. We have asked them to save some space in their facility for in case that they need to have anyone isolate in their house. And so all of them, given the capacity of their physical house, would save a room or two, and then also save a restroom for anyone who may have tested positive for COVID, so that they can still isolate and not sort of spread that virus around with the rest of their facility. Of course, masks, and so Georgia Tech, as well as the governing councils, that provide every student with a mask and sanitizer. And so those plans have been collected, and we are keeping them, and we are checking in with them on a regular basis. In terms of events, again, like I said, the chapters are not permitted at this time to host parties or large events at their house. If they do, they would be subject to due process within both their governing council, which, if you didn't know, is really a peer-to-peer leadership governing board, and actually has a lot of power. You know, the students really understand that process. They are committed to that process, and so they pay attention to the rules that their governing council has set. And we also now have a process, if we need to, for the Institute to hold organizations accountable for not following the CDC guidelines and jeopardizing the safety of our students and our campus community. The challenge sometimes is off campus, right? So we are working really hard in supporting our leaders and really getting the message across that just because things are the way that they need to be for the short run on campus, that doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want outside, because they're then coming back to the houses, they're coming back to campus, and as some know, we already have some spread of the virus. So we hope to not have to use discipline. Right now, I think, given the situation that we're in, our students are now realizing, okay, this is serious, and we are going to hunker down for this semester as long as we need to, and hoping that we can, in the meantime, have smaller events, smaller group things, lots of virtual opportunities, and hopefully by spring or sooner, we'll be able to open things back up, but we'll see.
Thank you so much for that, Jameson. Very helpful. And the last question, unless we have one more in the chat box, the last question I have is for Quinn. If you can speak to what are the benefits of students getting involved in terms of their career aspirations? How does getting involved in an organization benefit them when they actually go into the workforce? And just talk about what you've seen throughout your experience.
Sure, I think that's a really good question. It's certainly one that we hear from parents, but more often, I think I wish I could hear it from students. I don't believe that most of our students who, even if they are really deeply engaged, really understand the impact of what that involvement and engagement does for their career aspirations. So in terms of, what about when I leave tech? I've got this degree in hand. Not to brag, but we graduate a lot of really smart people. And they compete with each other once they leave Georgia Tech, and they compete against themselves and against other alums from Georgia Tech and from other schools for these really savvy, cool jobs that are, what they dreamed of doing. So the challenge then becomes, which I'm sure all of us can appreciate, is how do I differentiate myself amongst a market of really cool people who know lots of stuff and who have the same degree as me? If we've got the same letters after our name, how am I, Quinn, different from Tyler? And the answer really comes down to, well, what did you do outside of the classroom? right? Did you do research? Did you take on a passion project? Did you teach other people, whether that's a tutoring position or maybe you're getting involved with something like Jumpstart, teaching young children the skills that they'll need for the classroom. And so, you know, Victoria mentioned this, she alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I hate the term soft skills because I think it's ridiculous. All skills are good skills. But in terms of the soft skills like public speaking, of leading a team, of having difficult conversations, right? We have difficult conversations all the time in the workplace with your colleague who didn't meet a deadline that you set, with, you know, a customer who wants something of you that you can't offer them, right? These are all skills that we develop outside of the classroom. And so in terms of your career readiness and your ability to land that job or to land even a position in grad school right out of undergrad, your student organization involvement will really set you apart from another candidate who doesn't have an experience like you. In fact, this week as part of Engagement Week, I want to plug something that Fraternity and Sorority Life is doing. They have a whole session. They've partnered with the Career Center to put out a how do I advertise my Greek experience to employers or to recruiters who want me for an internship or a co-op. So certainly it's something that we think about a lot, and if you're interested in that, even if your student's not Greek, I think that they could get some powerful gems out of joining that session. That's on Engage. Everything's on Engage.
Thank you so much for that, Quinn. And once again, I would just like to thank the entire CSC team for just talking with us today, talking about engagement, involvement, some really helpful knowledge and gems about how your student can be successful outside the classroom. And parents and families, I would just like to thank you for attending. Please join us tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. We will have a webinar focusing on diversity, inclusion, and advocacy. Just talking about what that looks like at Georgia Tech. And then also Thursday, please mark your calendars for this as well. 3 p.m. Thursday, we will have Dr. Ben Holton from the STEMPS Health Center talking about COVID-related issues on campus, resources and that are available, and just any other health and safety measures that we have here on campus as well. So I know parents would love to hear from Dr. Ben Holton about what health and our STEMPS Health Services, how we are here to support you on campus at Georgia Tech. And so I have posted the information to our website in the chat box, and where you can view the attendee links and also a full schedule. We will be bringing you webinars weekly or bi-weekly throughout the entire fall semester. So we would love for you to tune in and mark your calendars for that. And lastly, a recording of this webinar will be available within the next 48 to 72 hours on our website as well, using the same link that I provided in the chat box. And so once again, thank you. We hope your students have a great rest of the week and a great semester, and go Jackets.